You think God's kingdom is built with perfect people, with polished faces, flawless records, clean hands, and proud chests. No, it's built with wreckage. It's built with scars. It's built with people who have been knocked flat and got back up with a limp. You want to know the kind of people God uses? Let me tell you, the kind that got nothing left to prove because they already lost everything. The kingdom is not a palace for the elite. It's a battlefield hospital for the wounded. And if you're bleeding, you're in the right place. You were cast out. Good. Because that's exactly when God starts looking your way. The world may throw you away, but God bends down and picks you up like a treasure buried in the dirt. See, that's the thing. What the world rejects, heaven redeems. That's the heart of the kingdom. He doesn't go shopping in the spotlight. He walks the alleyways, the prisons, the forgotten homes, the shattered minds, the broken marriages, the silent addictions. That's where he builds. You've been overlooked. That's your qualification. You've been counted out. That's your invitation. This isn't a game where the rich, the famous, the educated, the perfect get drafted. No, this is the kingdom of God. It runs on a different currency. The world trades in image. God deals in truth, and the truth is, He builds with the things the world discards. You might think your story's too messy, too dark, too far gone, but let me tell you something loud and clear. Your mess is the material. God builds beauty from ashes, not from polished resumes. When He starts building, He doesn't look for clean slates. He looks for surrendered hearts. He's not scared of your dirt. He's not offended by your history. He's not waiting for you to get it together. He's waiting for you to finally hand it over. Look through the Bible and you'll see it everywhere. Murderers, liars, cowards, prostitutes, doubters, outcasts. These aren't background characters. These are the foundation stones of the kingdom. Moses murdered a man. David committed adultery and tried to cover it up with more sin. Rahab was a prostitute. Peter denied Jesus to his face. Paul hunted Christians like animals, and yet, these are the very people God used to shake the world. That's not an accident. That's the blueprint. So if you've been tossed aside, you're not disqualified. You're exactly the type God uses. If you've failed, good. Now you know what humility tastes like. If you've been broken, good. That's where light can shine through. If you've been rejected, good. Now you know what it means to rely on the only approval that matters. You see, the world sets its standards based on achievement, appearance, influence. But the kingdom, it sets its standard based on availability. Are you willing? Are you honest? Are you ready to stop pretending and start participating? That's what matters. That's what God looks for. He's not asking, are you impressive? He's asking, are you surrendered? Some of the greatest kingdom builders were people no one saw coming, the ones nobody bet on, the ones society ignored, and that's the beauty of it. God doesn't play by human rules. He doesn't need you to clean up before coming to Him. In fact, He prefers you don't, because then He gets all the credit. Then your life becomes a testimony, not just a story. There's a reason why heaven rejoices over the one who was lost, not the 99 who didn't go anywhere. God delights in restoration. He celebrates redemption, and He uses the rejected to build something the proud can't even enter. He builds with the raw, with the bruised, with the people still walking around with tears in their eyes but fire in their hearts. The ones who know they can't make it without Him, that's who the kingdom belongs to. So don't hide your past. Don't bury your scars. Don't pretend you haven't been through the fire. That fire, that's your proof. You came out the other side. That's why you're still here. You're not trash. You're a temple under construction. The world might see rubble. God sees revival. The world sees damage. God sees destiny. The kingdom is not built with the strong showing off. It's built with the broken showing up, not for applause, but for purpose. So if the world threw you away, you better start thanking God, because that might have been the moment you got qualified for something eternal. You think your scars disqualify you, that they make you weak, unusable. Too messed up for God to work with. That's the lie. That's the story hell wants you to believe. But in the kingdom, your scars are not baggage, they're blueprints. They're not your shame, they're your signature. The places you bled are the very places He plans to build. See, in this world, people hide their wounds. They wear makeup over their bruises, filters over their truth, and silence over their story. But in the kingdom, the scars speak. They testify. They don't say, I'm broken. They scream, I survived. They don't say, I failed. They say, I've been through the fire and I'm still breathing. That's power. That's the raw material God uses. You've got wounds. Good. That means you've lived. You've got cracks in your armor. Good. That means you've fought some battles. But hear this. The kingdom doesn't move through people who pretend to be bulletproof. It moves through people who have taken real hits and still showed up, who still praise, who still serve, who still believe even after believing hurt. Your scars aren't ugly. They're sacred. They are reminders of where grace met you, of where God carried you. They're proof that you didn't quit when everything in you wanted to. Every scar is a story, and that story is the sermon someone else needs. You're waiting to be healed before you speak. Stop. Some people need to hear you bleed truth before they believe healing is even possible. God doesn't erase the pain you've been through. He redeems it. He flips it. The very thing that almost killed you becomes the very thing that brings someone else to life. That heartbreak, now you understand compassion. That loss, now you carry perspective. That failure, now you've got humility. That addiction, now you've got empathy. That dark valley you walked through, now you've got light to hand out to the next person who enters it. We want to throw away our broken chapters, but God puts a highlighter on them because it's in those moments, those exact moments, that we learn to trust Him, not when we were winning, but when we were barely holding on. He doesn't celebrate your performance. He honors your perseverance. When you kept walking with a limp, when you showed up without answers, when you prayed and didn't hear back but kept praying anyway, that's when heaven stood up. See, the devil wants you to be ashamed of your past. He wants you to think your story disqualifies you, but God flips it. What tried to destroy you becomes the very weapon you use to destroy the darkness in someone else's life. You can't help people with theories. You help them with scars, and if you've got them, you've got ministry. Stop running from your story. Stop editing your past, that moment when you thought it was over. That's when God started digging the foundation. That night you almost gave up. That's when He whispered, I'm still not done with you. That scar you hate, that's where someone else will find hope. People don't need perfect examples. They need real ones, and real people have been through real pain. That pain isn't a problem in the kingdom, it's the proof, the oil that comes out of your life. It doesn't come from ease, it comes from crushing. From pressure, from pain, you want anointing. Don't expect it to come wrapped in comfort. It comes through cost, and the scars are the receipt. You thought God wanted your perfection. He wants your honesty. You thought He wanted your performance. He wants your pain handed over to Him, because when you give Him your scars, He doesn't hide them. He puts them on display. Why? Because someone else needs to see that God doesn't just use the clean. He uses the cracked, the wounded, the ones who walked through hell and didn't lose their worship. So wear your scars, not as a symbol of what broke you, but of the God who put you back together. They're not your baggage. They're your battle plans. They're the blueprints, and God is still building. You want to be strong in the kingdom, then stop faking it. Stop walking around like you've got it all figured out. Stop pretending you don't cry in the dark, wrestle with doubts, or fall back into things you swore you'd never touch again. That mask, it doesn't impress God. That tough exterior, it's not strength. It's a wall that blocks the very power you're praying for. In the kingdom, weakness isn't a liability, it's an invitation. It's the open door that says, "Come in, God, I'm done trying to do this on my own." You keep asking for God's power, but you're still trying to be the hero of your story. That's not how this works. In the kingdom, power doesn't come through pride. It comes through surrender, through owning your need, through admitting, "I can't fix this." That's when heaven starts moving, not when you're standing tall, but when you finally fall to your knees. God is not drawn to your strength, He's drawn to your dependence. That's why the proud stay empty and the desperate walk away full. That's why the ones who shout about their accomplishments often miss the miracle, while the ones who crawl in silence get filled with fire. His power flows through cracks, not polish. The world tells you to toughen up, be unshakable, show no weakness, but that's the opposite of the kingdom. Jesus said, "My strength is made perfect in weakness," not in your trophies, not in your titles, not in your highlight reel, in your broken places, in the parts you try to hide, in the midnight moments when all you can say is, "God, help me." Real strength is not pretending you're okay. Real strength is knowing you're not and still choosing to show up, still choosing to believe, still choosing to trust the one who holds your life when everything around you is falling apart. That's where the power lies. Not in you being strong, but in you being available for Him to be strong through you. This is why the kingdom flips the script. It blesses the poor in spirit, not the arrogant. It lifts up the humble, not the loud. It chooses fishermen over Pharisees, stutterers over speakers, shepherds over soldiers. Because God is not looking for the best, He's looking for the broken who know they need Him. You keep waiting until you're strong to be used. But He's waiting for you to finally admit you're weak so He can be your strength. Every time you try to hold it together by your own willpower, you're blocking the very power you were meant to walk in. The kingdom doesn't run on your ability, it runs on your honesty, on your willingness to say, "I can't do this alone." Think about this. Some of the most dangerous people in the kingdom aren't the loudest ones. They're the ones who have bled quietly, been broken privately, and still kept following Jesus. They're dangerous because they've got nothing left to prove. They know their weakness, they've owned it, and because of that, God can trust them with power. You want to know when you're really ready to be used. It's not when you feel strong, it's when you're empty, when you've been emptied of pride, of self-reliance, of ego. That's when He fills you, that's when He breathes into you. That's when His Spirit takes over and does what you never could. We're not called to be perfect. We're called to be dependent. God doesn't need you to be fearless. He just needs you to be faithful. He's not asking you to carry the weight of the world. He's asking you to bring your weakness to the one who already carried the cross. So stop running from your weakness. That's not your curse, it's your calling card. That's where the kingdom shows up. That's where miracles start. That's where the power flows, not in your strength, but in the cracks, in the confession, in the surrender. God's not asking you to be enough. He's asking you to let Him be enough through you, because when you finally stop pretending, when you finally say, "God, I can't do this without you," that's when heaven says, "Now we're ready." That's where real power begins. You've been humbled, good, because ego doesn't survive in the kingdom. It can't. God doesn't work through prideful hearts. He tears them down, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you, because as long as you're full of yourself, there's no room for Him. As long as you're chasing applause, chasing validation, chasing status, you're blind to the only approval that matters, His, and He won't compete with your pride. He'll wait until it breaks. You thought being broken was the end. No, it was the beginning, because brokenness does what success never could. It kills the ego. The moment you realize you're not the main character, that's when God starts writing your real story. The truth is, God can't use people who are still trying to be their own savior. As long as you're fighting to prove you're strong, you're not ready. But the moment you admit you're weak, He steps in with a strength that shakes the earth. The kingdom is built on surrender, not status. It's built on people who have lost their reputation, lost their pride, lost their performance, and said, God, whatever's left, it's yours. That's who he moves through, not the flashy, not the loud, not the ones with a platform. The ones with an altar, the ones who stopped caring what people think and started caring what God wants. The ones who'd rather be broken in his hands than celebrated in the crowd. Ego tells you, I got this. Brokenness whispers, God, I need you. And that whisper is louder in heaven than the shout of any preacher trying to flex his gifting. The problem with ego is that it lies. It tells you you're fine. It tells you you're enough. It tells you you don't need help. But then life hits. The storm comes. The mask cracks. And you realize ego didn't save you. It isolated you. Ego built a stage. But brokenness built a prayer closet. The kingdom doesn't need another celebrity. It needs servants. It needs people who aren't climbing ladders. They're carrying crosses. People who aren't trying to be known. They're trying to make him known. Broken people get that. Because once you've been shattered and restored, you don't care about spotlight. You care about presence. You care about staying close to the one who picked you up when nobody else did. You know why God allows us to be broken. Because he loves us too much to let us believe the lie that we can live without him. He lets the pride fall apart so the relationship can be rebuilt. He lets the platform collapse so the foundation can be fixed. He lets us reach the end of ourselves, so we finally reach for him, and when ego dies, peace moves in, real peace, not the fake kind that depends on likes, money, approval, or image. The kind that says, I don't have to be impressive, I just have to be obedient. That's freedom, and that freedom only comes when you've been humbled. Some of the strongest people in the kingdom are the ones who have walked through fire, stripped of pride, reputation, control, and still chose to follow. They don't serve for applause. They serve because they remember who they were when God found them. And that memory keeps them low, keeps them grateful, keeps them real. So if you've been broken, if your name's been dragged, if your pride's been crushed, don't curse that season. Thank God for it. That was your training ground. That was where you learned to worship without music, trust without answers, pray without words. That's where you learned that being emptied of ego is the only way to be filled with purpose. And here's the thing. The world might not clap for your brokenness, but heaven does. Because heaven knows what ego can never do. Bring the lost home, heal the sick, speak with power, love without agenda. Only broken people love like that. Only broken people serve like that. Only broken people carry the fire and not burn up in it. So don't run from being humbled, run through it, let it strip you, let it shake you, let it crush the ego you didn't know was killing you. And when all that's left is a surrendered heart and empty hands, that's when God says, now I can use you. That's where the real kingdom begins. You keep waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect version of yourself, the perfect season to step into purpose. But let me tell you something that'll shatter that lie. God doesn't use perfect people. He uses available ones, that's it. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a seminary degree, a polished past, or 1,000 followers. You just need to say, God, I'm here, use me. That's the power move in the kingdom. Not perfection, surrender. You're sitting there thinking you're not ready. That's the proof you're getting close, because the ones God uses are never the ones who feel the most confident. They're the ones who show up anyway, who walk in the room with trembling hands and a willing heart. The ones who say, God, if you don't show up, I've got nothing. And guess what? He loves that posture, because that's when he gets the glory. You see, availability is not about your ability. It's about your willingness. It's about showing up even when your past says you shouldn't. It's about standing in the gap even when your resume screams unqualified. It's about saying yes before you know all the answers, before the pieces fit, before the crowd applauds. You don't wait to feel ready. You walk when he calls. Think about the people Jesus used, fishermen. Tax collectors, the overlooked, the ordinary. He didn't roll up to the palace looking for royalty. He found people who were working, people who were willing, people who didn't have it all together, but had just enough faith to drop their nets. That's who builds the kingdom. You've got doubt, welcome to the club. You've got a past, that's your oil. You've got fear, good. That means you'll rely on him. But you've got to stop sitting on your calling just because you don't feel qualified. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And when he calls your name, your only job is to say yes. You're praying for him to open doors, but are you even walking toward them? You want him to move mountains, but are you willing to move your feet? The kingdom doesn't grow by accident. It grows through people who step out before the ground looks safe. People who build when the wood is broken, who preach when their voice shakes, who serve when they feel empty, and love even when their heart's still healing. Availability doesn't mean you have the strength. It means you're willing to be a vessel for his strength. It means when you're tired, you still pray. When you're unsure, you still obey. When you don't feel worthy, you still worship. Because it was never about you being enough. It was always about him being everything. Let me say it plainly. If you wait until you feel ready, you'll never start. The enemy loves to keep you stuck in almost obeying, almost stepping out, almost trusting, but the kingdom doesn't shake on almost. It moves when people say yes without the guarantee, yes without the applause, yes without knowing what comes next. You want to be dangerous to the gates of hell, start obeying before it's convenient. Start loving when it costs you something. Start showing up with your broken self and letting God shine through the cracks. That's when the enemy panics, because a fully surrendered, available person doesn't play by fear's rules anymore. They move in faith. There's someone waiting on the other side of your obedience, someone who needs your story, your scars, your words, your presence, and they won't hear it if you keep waiting to feel qualified. You're not here to impress, you're here to impact, and that starts the moment you say, I'm available, God, use whatever's left of me. The kingdom isn't looking for perfect vessels. It's looking for open ones, so let him interrupt your plan, let him reroute your journey, let him speak through your weakness, because at the end of the day, it's not about how strong you were, it's about how surrendered you stayed. So stop waiting, stop delaying, stop doubting your place in this. You were born for such a time as this. You've got breath in your lungs and fire in your bones. You're not too late. You're not too broken. You're not too anything. You're here. You're breathing. You're available. That's all he needs. You keep waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect version of yourself, the perfect season to step into purpose. But let me tell you something that'll shatter that lie. God doesn't use perfect people. He uses available ones. That's it. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a seminary degree, a polished past, or 1,000 followers. You just need to say, God, I'm here. Use me. That's the power move in the kingdom. Not perfection, surrender. You're sitting there thinking you're not ready. That's the proof you're getting close. Because the ones God uses are never the ones who feel the most confident. They're the ones who show up anyway, who walk in the room with trembling hands and a willing heart, the ones who say, God, if you don't show up, I've got nothing. And guess what? He loves that posture because that's when he gets the glory. You see, availability is not about your ability. It's about your willingness. It's about showing up even when your past says you shouldn't. It's about standing in the gap even when your resume screams unqualified. It's about saying yes before you know all the answers, before the pieces fit, before the crowd applauds. You don't wait to feel ready. You walk when he calls. Think about the people Jesus used. Fishermen, tax collectors, the overlooked, the ordinary. He didn't roll up to the palace looking for royalty. He found people who were working, people who were willing, people who didn't have it all together but had just enough faith to drop their nets. That's who builds the kingdom. You've got doubt. Welcome to the club. You've got a past. That's your oil. You've got fear. Good. That means you'll rely on Him. But you've got to stop sitting on your calling just because you don't feel qualified. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And when He calls your name, your only job is to say yes. You're praying for Him to open doors, but are you even walking toward them? You want Him to move mountains, but are you willing to move your feet? The kingdom doesn't grow by accident. It grows through people who step out before the ground looks safe. People who build when the wood is broken, who preach when their voice shakes, who serve when they feel empty, and love even when their heart's still healing. Availability doesn't mean you have the strength. It means you're willing to be a vessel for His strength. It means when you're tired, you still pray. When you're unsure, you still obey. When you don't feel worthy, you still worship. Because it was never about you being enough. It was always about Him being everything. Let me say it plainly. If you wait until you feel ready, you'll never start. The enemy loves to keep you stuck in almost obeying, almost stepping out, almost trusting, but the kingdom doesn't shake on almost. It moves when people say yes without the guarantee, yes without the applause, yes without knowing what comes next. You want to be dangerous to the gates of hell. Start obeying before it's convenient. Start loving when it costs you something. Start showing up with your broken self and letting God shine through the cracks. That's when the enemy panics, because a fully surrendered, available person doesn't play by fear's rules anymore. They move in faith. There's someone waiting on the other side of your obedience, someone who needs your story. Your scars, your words, your presence, and they won't hear it if you keep waiting to feel qualified. You're not here to impress. You're here to impact. And that starts the moment you say, I'm available, God. Use whatever's left of me. The kingdom isn't looking for perfect vessels. It's looking for open ones, so let Him interrupt your plan. Let Him reroute your journey. Let Him speak through your weakness, because at the end of the day, it's not about how strong you were. It's about how surrendered you stayed. So stop waiting, stop delaying, stop doubting your place in this. You were born for such a time as this. You've got breath in your lungs and fire in your bones. You're not too late. You're not too broken. You're not too anything. You're here. You're breathing. You're available. That's all He needs. You ever look around and think, why would God use someone like me? You're not alone. Every person He ever used in Scripture had that moment of fear, of doubt, of insecurity crawling up their spine whispering, you're not enough. But here's the twist. They weren't, and neither are you. But that's the whole point. God never asked you to be enough. He just asked you to say yes, because the pressure was never supposed to be on your shoulders to begin with. It's not about what you can do, it's about what He can do through you. He specializes in the ones no one expects. He picks the broken, the rejected, the ones whose names were never called first. Because when they rise, everyone knows it had to be God. That's what He wants. Not a polished performance, not a perfect vessel, but a life that makes people say, there's no way they did that on their own. And that's where you come in. You've been through things that left bruises. Things that knocked the breath out of you. You've walked through shame, fought battles in silence, buried pain under your smile, and yet you're still here, still breathing, still standing. That's not weakness. That's evidence that God's not done with you. The kingdom isn't built on the strong flexing their muscles. It's built on the broken bringing their story. It's not the ones who say, look what I've done, but the ones who say, look what He did with me. That's what carries weight. That's what breaks chains. That's what flips atmospheres. You don't have to feel powerful to be powerful. You just have to show up with your broken heart and your open hands. You think God can't use you because of your past. That's exactly why He can. Because someone else out there is drowning in the same shame you survived. They don't need another filtered testimony. They need to know there's a way out. And your scars are the map. What you thought disqualified you is actually the very thing that confirms your calling. You've been overlooked. Good. That means God gets to be the one who promotes you. You've been rejected. Perfect. That means you're in great company. Ask Joseph, ask David, ask the woman at the well, ask the thief on the cross. All of them were counted out by people, but they were counted in by God, and that's the only count that matters. This kingdom doesn't run on the impressive, it runs on the obedient, the ones who stop trying to prove themselves and start pouring themselves out, who say, I might be broken, but I'm still available, who realize that God doesn't need your image, He needs your yes. And He'll take that yes, no matter how shaky it sounds, and do what only He can do. Multiply it, stretch it, anoint it. You don't need to wait until you're fixed. You need to walk while you're still limping. Because the kingdom isn't waiting for your perfection. It's activated by your participation. Every time you share your testimony, every time you step out when it's scary, every time you show grace when it hurts, you're building something eternal. You're sowing seeds that'll outlive you, and maybe you're thinking, but I'm still struggling. Good, that makes you relatable. You're not called to be someone's idol. You're called to be a mirror that reflects the God who met you in the mess. And when they see Him in you, even while you're still healing, that's when they realize they don't have to wait to come home. They can come just like they are, just like you did. So stop disqualifying yourself. You've got a story the world needs. You've got a flame that still burns, even after the storm. You've got something hell tried to steal but couldn't. And if you're still breathing, that means God still sees purpose in you. You're not weak, you're wounded. There's a difference, and in the kingdom, wounds don't weaken your witness. They validate it. You don't need a title to be chosen. You don't need a mic to have impact. You just need the courage to show up broken, knowing that God can do more with your surrender than you ever could with your strength. He builds with the broken. He moves through the messy. He shines through the cracked places. So bring Him what you've got, even if it's in pieces, because He's not looking for perfect, He's looking for you.